Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, heralded a new era in Chinese history, renowned for groundbreaking reforms and monumental constructions.
2,000 years ago, China's first emperor was buried with rivers of liquid mercury and a maze of traps. To this day, no one dares to open his tomb. Opening this tomb could release ancient poisons, activate deadly traps. Sounds like fiction? Scientists are taking it very seriously. Join us as we unravel the mysteries surrounding this tomb. Qin Shi Huang's tomb. The mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, is both captivating and enigmatic. Discovered in 1974, this enormous burial site still holds many secrets. Ancient Chinese history is filled with enigmas, but few are as intriguing as the mystery of Qin Shi Huang's tomb. The emperor who unified the Middle Kingdom in the 3rd century BCE left behind a remarkable legacy. His mausoleum, situated near Xi'an in Shanxi province, continues to fascinate both researchers and the general public. Let's delve deeper into this mysterious tomb, rich with ancient tales and modern scientific findings. Qin Shi Huang made a lasting impact on Chinese history. He was crowned king of Qin in 247 BCE and aimed to conquer the 6 other rival kingdoms, establishing the first unified Chinese empire. His reign was characterized by significant accomplishments, constructing a precursor to the Great Wall, digging the Lingkou Canal, which spans 32 kilometers, creating his own mausoleum, a massive undertaking. This final project required a workforce of 700,000 individuals over 38 years, from 246 to 208 BCE. The magnitude of this work showcases the ruler's extraordinary power and ambition. The tomb of this Chinese emperor is rumored to conceal a peril that has remained undisturbed for 2,000 years. In 1974, farmers made one of the most significant archaeological finds ever in a simple field in Shanxi province, China. While they were digging, they uncovered pieces of a clay human figure. This was just the beginning. Further archaeological work showed that the field was above several pits filled with thousands of life-sized terracotta figures of soldiers and war horses, along with acrobats, important officials, and various animals. The purpose of this terracotta army seems to be to protect the nearby tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the powerful first emperor of the Qin dynasty who ruled from 221 to 210 BCE. Although many parts of the necropolis around the tomb have been investigated, the emperor's actual tomb has never been opened despite the great curiosity surrounding it. It's likely that no one has looked inside this tomb for over 2,000 years, since the feared emperor was sealed within. One major reason for this caution is that archaeologists worry about the potential damage that excavation could cause to the tomb, which could result in the loss of crucial historical data. Right now, only invasive archaeological methods could be used to access the tomb, which carries a high risk of causing permanent damage. One of the clearest examples of this comes from the excavations of the city of Troy in the 1870s by Heinrich Schliemann. In his hastiness and naivety, his work managed to destroy almost all traces of the very city he'd set out to uncover. Archaeologists are certain they don't want to be impatient and make these same mistakes again. Scientists have floated the idea of using certain non-invasive techniques to look inside the tomb. One idea is to utilize muons, the subatomic product of cosmic rays colliding with atoms in the Earth's atmosphere, that can peer through structures like an advanced X-ray. However, it looks like most of these proposals have been slow to get off the ground. Cracking open the tomb could come with much more immediate and deadly dangers, too. In an account written by ancient Chinese historian Sima Qian, around 100 years after Qin Shi Huang passed away, he explains that the tomb is hooked up to booby traps that were designed to unalive any intruder. Palaces and beautiful towers were built for 100 officials, and the tomb was filled with rare artifacts and amazing treasures. Craftsmen were instructed to create crossbows and arrows ready to shoot at anyone who dares to enter the tomb. Mercury was used to mimic the 100 rivers, including the Yangtze and Yellow River as well as the Great Sea, and was set to flow mechanically. Even if the 2,000-year-old bow weapons don't work, this account implies that a flood of toxic mercury could sweep over the gravediggers. That might seem like an empty threat, but scientific research has examined mercury levels around the tomb and discovered they are much higher than what would be expected in a normal piece of land. The authors of a 2020 paper concluded that highly volatile mercury might be leaking through cracks that have formed in the structure over time, and their study backs up ancient records about the tomb, which is thought to have never been opened or looted. King Ying Jing was born in Handan, the capital of Zhao, during the late Warring States period. His parents were Prince Yiren and Lady Zhao. At that time, Prince Yiren was a diplomatic hostage in Zhao, but a wealthy merchant named Lu Buwei recognized his potential. He advocated for Yiren's adoption by Lady Huang, the childless principal consort of Crown Prince Angguo, which made Yiren the favored heir. Sadly, Crown Prince Angguo passed away just 3 days after his coronation, leading to Prince Yiren becoming king of Qin. However, he died 3 years later in 247 BC, and the young Yingzheng took over the throne as King Zheng of Qin. In the early years of his reign, Lu Buwei, who was his chancellor along with royal aristocrats and consort relatives, held significant power. But once Yingzheng came of age, he managed to eliminate their influence and took full control of the state by 235 BC. By 221 BC, he had defeated all the other warring states, unifying China and becoming its first emperor. Throughout his reign, he led military campaigns against the four barbarians, which greatly expanded Chinese territory. His campaigns against the Yue tribes from 221 BC to 214 BC permanently incorporated the Baiyue lands of present-day Hunan and Guangdong into the Sinosphere. Additionally, in 215 BC, he fought against the nomads in the Inner Asian steppe, conquering the entire Ordos Plateau from the Xiongnu. However, after the fall of the Qin dynasty in 207 BC, this region was lost and later retaken by the Xiongnu under Modu Chanyu, not to be recovered until 127 BC during the reign of Emperor Wu of the succeeding dynasty. For now, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang remains sealed and hidden from view, but it is not forgotten. When the time comes, it's possible that scientific progress could finally uncover the secrets that have been resting here undisturbed for about 2,200 years. While his tomb holds deadly secrets, the emperor's life was no less dangerous. He survived shocking assassination attempts that shook the entire empire. Qin Shi Huang had real enemies, and one of them came terrifyingly close to ending it all. Let's find out more. Assassination attempts on Qin Shi Huang. King Zheng and his army kept pushing forward in their takeover of the nearby states. The state of Yan was too weak to stand against the Qin. Small and vulnerable, it had already faced many attacks from Qin soldiers. In 227 BC, Crown Prince Dan of Yan devised a plan to assassinate King Zheng, enlisting Jing Ke and Qin Wuyang to carry out the mission. The assassins managed to get close to King Zheng by pretending to bring a diplomatic gift, a map of Dukang along with the severed head of Fan Wuji. Qin Wuyang was the first to step up and present the map case, but was paralyzed by fear. Jing Ke then moved forward with both gifts, explaining that his partner was shaking because he had never seen the Son of Heaven. When the dagger fell out from the map, Jing immediately lunged at King Zheng, but the king jumped up and managed to escape. He frantically tried to get away from the assassin, running around a pillar while struggling to pull out his own sword. None of the courtiers around him were allowed to carry weapons in his presence, and only a royal physician was able to slow down the assassin by hitting him with a medicine bag. When King Zheng finally got his sword out, he cut Jing's thigh, stopping the assassin. In a last-ditch effort, Jing Ke threw the dagger but missed, and was soon unalived by King Zheng and the royal guards who had just arrived. The Yan state was completely conquered 5 years later. The second assassination attempt happened when Gao Jianli, who was a good friend of Jing Ke, wanted to get revenge. As a well-known Zhu player, he was called to perform for King Zheng. Someone in the palace recognized him and figured out what he was planning. Not wanting to unalive such a talented musician, the king ordered that his eyes be gouged out, and then he continued with the performance. The king complimented Gao's playing and even let him come closer. The Jew had been made heavier with a lead slab, and Gao Jianli swung it at the king but missed. The second attempt to assassinate the king failed. Gao was executed soon after. In 230 BC, the Qin state managed to defeat the Han state. In 218, a former aristocrat from Han named Zhang Liang vowed to take revenge on Qin Shi Huang. He sold his possessions and hired a strong assassin, creating a heavy metal cone that weighed 120 catties, about 160 lb, or 97 kilograms. The two of them concealed themselves in the bushes along the emperor's path over a mountain during his third imperial tour. At a given signal, the strong assassin threw the cone at the first carriage, breaking it apart. However, the emperor had two identical carriages to confuse attackers, and he was actually in the second one. So the assassination attempt failed, but both men managed to escape the following manhunt. He wasn't just buried like a king, he ruled like a force of nature. To understand why his life was surrounded by danger, we need to go back to the beginning of the man who became China's first emperor. Let's unravel the legacy of the man they called Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang was born Yingjing in Handan, the capital of Zhao, during the late Warring States period. His parents were Prince Yuren and Lady Zhao. At that time, Prince Yuren was a diplomatic hostage in Zhao, but a wealthy merchant named Buwei recognized his potential. He advocated for Yuren's adoption by Lady Huayang, the childless principal consort of Crown Prince Anguo, which made Yuren the favored heir. Sadly, Crown Prince Anguo passed away just 3 days after his coronation, leading to Prince Yuren becoming king of Qin. However, he died 3 years later in 247 BC, and the young Yingjing took over the throne as King Zheng of Qin. In the early years of his reign, Lu Buwei, who was his chancellor, along with royal aristocrats and consort relatives, held significant power. But once Yingjing came of age, he managed to eliminate their influence and took full control of the state by 235 BC. By 221 BC, he had defeated all the other warring states, unifying China and becoming its first emperor. Throughout his reign, he led military campaigns against the four barbarians, which greatly increased the size of Chinese territory. His campaigns against the Yue tribes from 221 BC to 214 BC permanently incorporated the Buwei lands, now known as Hunan and Guangdong, into the Sinosphere. Additionally, his campaigns against the nomads in the Inner Asian steppe in 215 BC resulted in the conquest of the entire Ordos Plateau from the Xiongnu. However, after the fall of the Qin dynasty in 207 BC, this region was lost and later reclaimed by the Xiongnu under Modu Chanyu, not to be recovered until 127 BC during the reign of Emperor Wu of the Han dynasty. Qin Shi Huang is a key figure in Chinese history. As the ruler of a unified nation, he collaborated with his minister Li Si to implement significant economic, social, and political changes aimed at standardizing various aspects of Chinese society, including writing systems, currency, measurement units, and wagon axle sizes. Traditionally, he is said to have prohibited and burned numerous books and executed scholars. His public works included merging different state defensive walls into the Great Wall of China, creating a vast new national road network, and undertaking hydraulic engineering projects like the Zhengguo Canal and Lingkou Canal, along with his enormous mausoleum protected by a life-size terracotta army. After surviving 3 notable assassination attempts, he governed the country with strict authority until his passing in 210 BC during his 5th trip to eastern China. Qin Shi Huang is often depicted as a harsh legalist and a cruel tyrant, views that originate partly from the harsh Confucian critiques made during the later Han dynasty and have been passed down by Confucian historians through the following dynasties. Since the mid-20th century, contemporary scholars have started to challenge this portrayal, sparking significant debate about the true nature of his policies and reforms, particularly after examining textual evidence found in newly uncovered artifacts like the Shui Hudi and Liye bamboo slips. Modern Chinese texts frequently refer to Qin Shi Huang by his personal name Yingjing, where Ying is considered the surname and Zheng is the first name. The leaders of the Qin state had called themselves kings since the reign of King Huaiwan in 325 BC. When Zheng took the throne, he was referred to as the King of Qin or King Zheng of Qin. This title positioned him as an equal to the rulers of the Shang and Zhou dynasties, the last of whom had been overthrown by King Zhao Xiang of Qin in 256 BC. After Qi surrendered in 221 BC, King Zheng brought together all the territories of the former kingdom of Zhou. Instead of keeping the title of king, he established a new title for himself, Huangdi, Emperor. This title merged 2 significant titles, Huang from the legendary 3 sovereigns and Di from the famous 5 emperors of ancient China. The title aimed to capture some of the respect associated with the Yellow Emperor, who was revered during the later Warring States period and seen as a founder of the Chinese nation. King Zheng adopted the regnal name of First Emperor, with the idea that his successors would be known as the Second Emperor. third emperor, and so forth through the years. Actually, this naming convention lasted only until his direct heir, the second emperor. The new title had religious implications. Because of this, scholars like Peter A. Budberg and Edward H. Schaeffer sometimes refer to it as the Arch and the first emperor as the first Thearch. The first emperor aimed for his empire to endure through time, but after it was overthrown and replaced by the Han dynasty following his passing, it became common to add Qin to his title. According to the Shiji, written by Sima Qian during the Han dynasty, the first emperor was the oldest son of the Qin prince Yiren, who later became King Zhuangxiang of Qin. At that time, Prince Yiren was living at the Zhao court, acting as a hostage to ensure peace between Qin and Zhao. Prince Yiren fell in love at first sight with a concubine of Lu Buwei, a wealthy merchant from Wei. Lu agreed for her to marry Yiren, and she became known as Lady Zhao after the state of Zhao. He was named Zhao Zheng, with the name Zheng derived from his birth month, Zhengyue, the first month of the Chinese lunar calendar. The Zhao clan name came from his father's lineage and was not connected to his mother's name or where he was born. Song Zhong notes that his birthday was notably on the first day of Zhengyue. Lu Buwei's schemes later assisted Yiren in becoming King Zhuangxiang of Qin in 250 BC. Nonetheless, the Shiji also asserted that the first emperor was not actually the son of Prince Yiren, but rather of Lu Buwei. This version of events suggests that when Lu Buwei presented the dancing girl to the prince, she was already his concubine and had become pregnant with his child, which was born after an unusually extended pregnancy period. Translations of the Lushi Chunchu indicate that Zhao Ji gave birth to the future emperor in Handan in 259 BC, during the first month of the 48th year of King Zhaoxiang of Qin. The belief that the emperor was an illegitimate child, which was widely accepted throughout Chinese history, contributed to the generally negative perception of the first emperor. However, several modern scholars have questioned this narrative regarding his birth, suggesting that Lu Buwei, a merchant, was the biological father of the first emperor, was particularly derogatory, as later Confucian society viewed merchants as the lowest social class. In 246 BC, King Zhuangxiang passed away after ruling for only 3 years, and his 13-year-old son took over the throne. During this time, Zhao Jing was still quite young, so Lu Buwei served as the regent prime minister of the state of Qin, which was engaged in battles against the other 6 states. Fast forward to 235 BC, 9 years later, Zhao Jing took full control after Lu Buwei was exiled due to his involvement in a scandal with Queen Dowager Zhao. Zhao Chengzhao, known as Lord Chang'an, was Zhao Jing's legitimate half-brother, sharing the same father but having a different mother. After Zhao Zheng became king, Chengzhao revolted at Tunliu and then surrendered to the state of Zhao. Zhao Zheng executed Chengzhao's remaining supporters and family members. To prevent the political turmoil seen during the Warring States period from happening again, Qin Shi Huang and Li Si aimed to completely eliminate the feudal system of loose alliances and federations. They restructured the empire into administrative divisions and subdivisions, starting with 36, later increased to 40 commanderies, followed by counties, townships, and 100 family units, Li, which are similar to today's sub-districts and communities. People in these units would no longer be recognized by their home region or previous feudal state, such as being called a Chu person. Instead, appointments would be made based on merit rather than inherited rights. Qin Shi Huang and Li Si brought economic unity to China by standardizing weights and measures. They set a standard length for wagon axles to improve road transport. The emperor also created a vast network of roads and canals to enhance trade and communication. The various states' currencies were standardized to the Banliang coin. Additionally, the forms of Chinese characters were unified. Under Li Si's guidance, the seal script from the state of Qin became the official standard, and the Qin script was simplified by eliminating variant forms. This change removed all regional scripts, creating a universal written language for all of China, despite the many different spoken dialects. According to Chinese historical records, after he unified the nation in 221 BC, Qin Shi Huang took all the bronze weapons from the defeated states and transformed them into 12 grand statues, known as the 12 metal colossi, which he used to decorate his palace. Each statue was reported to stand 5 zhang, 11.5 meters tall, and weigh around 1,000 dan, about 70 tons. Sima Qian regarded this as one of the emperor's major accomplishments, comparable to the unification of laws, weights and measures, standardization of carriage axle widths, and the standardization of the writing system. For 600 years, these statues were discussed and relocated from one palace to another until they were ultimately destroyed in the 4th century AD, leaving no illustrations behind. In contrast to the previous Warring States period, which was marked by continuous conflict, it was also seen as a golden age for free thinking. Qin Shi Huang abolished the 100 schools of thought, which included Confucianism and various other philosophies. With all other ideologies prohibited, legalism became the enforced belief system of the Qin dynasty. Starting in 213 BC, motivated by Li Si, and to prevent scholars from comparing his rule to previous ones, Qin Shi Huang commanded the burning of most existing books, except for those related to astrology, agriculture, medicine, divination, and the history of the Qin state. This action also aimed to support the ongoing reform of the writing system by eliminating outdated scripts. Severe punishments were imposed for owning the classic of poetry or the Book of Documents. According to the later Shiji, the next year, Qin Shi Huang had around 460 scholars buried alive for having these banned books. His eldest son Fusu condemned him for this decision. Although the emperor's library kept some copies of the forbidden texts, most were destroyed when Xiang Yu set fire to the Xianyang palaces in 206 BC. Recent studies indicate that the tale of the Qin emperor burying Confucian scholars alive might actually be better viewed as a legend from the Han period about Confucian martyrs, rather than a true historical fact. It suggests that the Qin emperor likely ordered the execution of a group of alchemists who had tricked him with false claims of immortality or magical abilities, instead of specifically targeting the entire group of Confucian scholars. After the fall of the Qin dynasty, during the early Han period, Confucian scholars who had worked for the Qin court probably tried to separate themselves from what the new dynasty viewed as a discredited and unpopular regime. To do this, modern scholars believe these Confucians may have reinterpreted the earlier executions to present themselves as victims or possible targets of Qin oppression. Kong Anguo, a prominent scholar and a direct descendant of Confucius, played a role in shaping this narrative by labeling the executed alchemists as Confucians. He also connected this narrative to his own story of finding long-lost Confucian texts, which he claimed to have uncovered hidden behind a wall in his family home. Qin Shi Huang also adhered to the 5 elements theory: fire, water, earth, wood, and metal. It was thought that the royal family of the earlier Zhou dynasty ruled through the power of fire, which is linked to the color red. Therefore, the new Qin dynasty needed to be governed by the next element, water, which is Zhao Zheng's birth element. Water was symbolized by the color black, making black the favored color for Qin clothing, flags, and pennants. Other connections include the north as the cardinal direction, the winter season, and the number 6. As he aged, Qin Shi Huang fervently searched for the legendary elixir of life, which was said to grant immortality. In his relentless pursuit, he fell victim to numerous fake elixirs. He made 3 trips to Zhifu Island in his quest. On one occasion, he dispatched Xu Fu, resident of Zhifu Island, with ships loaded with hundreds of young men and women to find the mythical Mount Penglai. They were in search of Anqi Sheng, a magician who was said to have invited Qin Shi Huang during a chance encounter on his travels. The expedition never came back, possibly out of fear of the repercussions of failure. Legends suggest they reached Japan and established a colony there. Additionally, the emperor's book burning, which spared alchemical texts, might be interpreted as an effort to concentrate the best scholars' minds on his quest. Some of those who were buried alive were alchemists, and this could have been a way to test their abilities to defy mortality. The emperor constructed a network of tunnels and passageways leading to each of his more than 200 palaces, as traveling without being seen was believed to protect him from evil spirits. In 211 BC, a significant meteor reportedly fell in Dongjun, located in the lower part of the Yellow River, and someone carved the rebellious phrase that read, "The first emperor will pass away and his land will be divided." The emperor dispatched an imperial secretary to look into this prophecy. Since no one admitted to the act, all the nearby residents were executed and the stone was crushed. During his 5th journey through eastern China, the emperor fell gravely ill in Pingyuan Jin, Pingyuan County, Shandong, and passed away in July or August of 210 BC at the palace in Shakyu Prefecture, which was about 2 months' travel from Xianyang at the age of 49. The reason for Qin Shi Huang's passing is still a mystery, although he had been exhausted from his long reign. One theory suggests that he was poisoned by an elixir containing mercury, which was given to him by his court alchemists and doctors in his pursuit of immortality. After seeing the emperor passed away, Chancellor Li Si was worried that the news might cause a widespread revolt during the 2 months it would take for the imperial entourage to return to the capital Xianyang. Li Si chose to conceal the emperor's passing. The only members of the entourage who were informed were a younger son, Ying Huhai, the eunuch Zhao Gao, and 5 or 6 favored eunuchs. Li Si arranged for carts filled with rotten fish to be placed in front of and behind the emperor's wagon, hoping to mask the terrible odor of his decaying body in the summer heat. They pretended he was still alive, hiding in the shade of the wagon, changing his clothes every day, bringing him food, and acting as if they were delivering messages to and from him. Once they arrived in Xianyang, it was declared that the emperors passed away. Qin Shi Huang had always avoided discussing his own passing and had never prepared a will. Even though his eldest son Fusu was the rightful heir to the throne, Li Si and the chief eunuch Zhao Gao plotted to eliminate Fusu, who was allied with their adversary General Meng Tian. Meng Tian's brother Meng Yi, a high-ranking minister, had previously punished Zhao Gao. Li Si and Zhao Gao fabricated a letter supposedly from Qin Shi Huang, instructing Fusu and General Meng to take their own lives. The scheme succeeded, and Hu Hai, the younger son, began his short reign as the second emperor, later referred to as Qin Shi or second-generation Qin. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.